it's an exciting industry to be part of, and people get excited when they hire a content team and they hire a social media marketer and they want them to do stuff, right? And they want them to be active at creating amazing content. And sometimes that ambition overwhelms or overlooks what's right for your brand. And so for us, it was always go back to the brief. What is your brand? What are your brand's pillars? What do you believe in? What should you own? And does that mean that you should be creating, taking your logo and building it out of donuts and posting it to every channel just because it's National Donut Day, which has happened to me and brands that I've had the pleasure/displeasure of working with. So for me, it's not about, and we talked about this in your session, it's not about volume of how many tweets did you get this week or how many Instagram posts did you post. It's like the quality and the relevancy to your brand's pillars, and is that message really important to your audience and to the things that you believe in as a company.
To follow on from Kyle, I think as a consumer we're being bombarded with branded content on a daily basis, and especially around big events like Halloween or Easter. I don't want to see another band jumping on the bandwagon, and I think that through everyone doing it, it lessens the impact, and I think being strategic or tactical about when you're going out with calendar-based messages. So one really amazing example is American Express and Small Business Day. They basically created their own Small Business Day because it didn't exist. And I think the first year it did really well, but it ended up going to Parliament. And they created a petition to make it an official day, and now Small Business Day is in the kind of governmental calendar, and that's how successful that campaign was. So, and the other great thing about that campaign is that it was about helping their customers help their customers. So yeah, it had this really lovely knock-on benefit, and it was totally doing something that was right for their audience rather than, we're a brand, let's talk about Easter bunnies, which was really nice to see.
Something to kind of just jump onto that is that if you're the one programming the content, clearly you want to have something that's like going to cut through. You need to consider that every other brand has the exact same calendar. Like they are looking at National Bullshit Day and filling in the blank. Same with Christmas and Easter. And if that's your strategy, you will not have any success. Or if not that, you're going to be talking about something that is not necessarily relevant to your brand.
That's awesome. National, I like that day. You just came up with. That was really great. It's so true. You know, Jane, you talked a lot about using analytics to spot and engage with super fans. Do you have any examples of that?
Sure. I mean, I think that based off of what everyone was just saying, if you're a donut shop, you probably should be posting about Donut Day because people who follow you on social media, that's what they care about, right? So understanding who your audience is through who's actually engaging in the posts that you've been doing, and then seeing what other things they like to engage with, those are the types of things you should be posting about, regardless of what's trending. And you can even create your own micro trends by, if you know exactly who your audience is and you know exactly that they really do care about Donut Day, then you can create that, just like American Express did with Small Business Day.
Right, so it's all about having like a mix of what people want to see and what you want to make. Because me personally, as a content creator, you have to stay authentic to yourself. Like, the best ideas are the ones that are original and creative and that like are just different from what everybody else is doing. And when you can find those things, like you can make an event out of it. So I talked about balancing like sprint events versus like marathon series. So sprints are more like you organize a week, like Shark Week, that's a sprint event where like people get really excited about it. It takes a lot of time to prepare for it, but once you like do it, like that whole week is like very, things are moving and momentum is going. And then you also have to have some kind of marathon series where you do some sort of consistent content, like maybe once a week, once a month, whatever it is, but something that makes people want to come back and know when to come back as well.
I have a name for that if you guys want it. And I've said this for a very long time, but I call it calculated spontaneity. Yeah. So you have your series that is consistent on your YouTube channel or social media posts that you do every week or however often. And then you also have to be spontaneous so people aren't just like, oh, I'm only gonna look here on Tuesdays, because I know that's the only day that I'm in post, right? So I'm only gonna look there. But then if occasionally you're throwing in something new, they kept on their toes a little bit.
I think it's probably worth noting that every type of calendar strategy you're going to create is going to be different for each platform you're using. You can't blanket this across the board because each community is very, very different. I find it too frequently that brands will like either repost stuff to different platforms, or they don't really know how the community like talks on that platform, and then there's an entire subreddit called Fellow Kids about brands who don't know how to talk to the people they're trying to talk to, and it's actually really worth looking up because it'll show you what not to do along the way.
That's where social is going. But Ty, I want you to talk about, you said more about brands will need to be nimble and not precious with their content if they're going to keep up with the high frequency of real-time posting that's necessary. Now you have a background at Red Bull. Talk to us about that.
Man, I mean, this is something that I say from the advertising side, because it's something that I wish brands could do. It gets harder and harder the bigger your brand is, and it becomes nearly impossible when you're at the size of something like Red Bull. Red Bull, on the other hand, though, is incredible because they put so much effort and money into their video distribution. That almost is their thing they're providing, opposed from the drink itself. They, in fact, their goal is to make their content as literally valuable as the can one day, so they're equal in sales. And the movie they did, The Art of Flight, a few years back, actually was the #1 movie on iTunes for over big blockbusters. So I realize I'm kind of rambling, but I think the most important element when you're creating content is that you can somehow get away from checks and balances and having to constantly get things approved and going through 4 chains of breaking down what the content is, because anyone can deconstruct anything. It doesn't matter what it is. You can just say all the reasons why it's wrong. You gotta just put stuff out and then see what happens.
There is the natural answer to that question is what's the future? I think a lot of people would say, well, it's real time, right? It's like, get it now, be the first to be the one to comment when the lights go out at the Super Bowl, be the first. And I think that there's some novelty to that, and it's kind of interesting, and people are building social media teams to try and capitalize that. They're all just watching, the Emmys for that thing that they can write about and be the first to do. But I think what you have to do is go to the brands that you're working with. Again, figure out what is the thing that what do they want to own? For us at Flipboard, we realized that when we watched our analytics, we realized that wow, people come in for an event. They come in and they load up on information before an event, so they can kind of know what to expect. Then it's pretty it's pretty silent on Flipboard during an event, but then afterward, they want to come and get a roundup of all the 360-degree view of what the summation of that event. And so for us, brands that want to position themselves with a leadership and a thoughtful positioning, wow, we can really kind of appeal to them because we have that thoughtful 360-degree roundup after an event, or that you got to know this is everything you need to know going into an event. And so it really, we can align that our value proposition and those things that we can own better than a Twitter, which is awesome at real in the moment, live tweeting is literally the term, right? We can find brands that want to kind of own a different moment and make sure it makes more sense and aligns with their value props.
I think coming back to the point of checks and balances, obviously not all creative content is created equal, and I think it's worth breaking your editorial calendar out into different content streams. So the stuff that needs to go through the PR team and the legal team, but still needs to get out there in 24 hours, there's definitely planning for spontaneity. So I actually used to work with a utility company in the UK, which had kind of over 1,000 people in their marketing team alone. And so getting a sign off from anyone for anything was insane. And I was trying to run their blog and kind of get people to engage with them. And so we had 3 different content streams, and one of them was for PR releases and urgent news that had to go out there as soon as possible. And we realized that we could piggyback on the PR sign-off strategy for kind of emergency releases because there was a huge big business impact. And so that meant when there was like a critical event and we had to get something out the door in 24 hours, we could go through the PR team to get there. And that was completely removed from everything else we did on the blog, and there was a completely different process for that. So if you do have to get legal involved, then it's sometimes worth breaking that out and running a different process or a different stream for that.
So Eileen, you talk a little bit about the future being program versus demand content. Talk to us about that.
I think there's a space for both like high quality programmed content, like something that people can expect on a weekly basis, whatever consistent basis, but also you have to mix it in with like live stream type of events like Facebook Live, Snapchat, Instagram stories where you directly engage with your audience. You have to do both. Like there's not like, I mean, maybe you can stay with the programming, but live is so key to like the future. I think more and more people are going to expect brands to be able to interact with you live.
And I think this sort of gets very difficult for brands because if you have one person managing your social media, they can't be everywhere at one time. Frequently what brands will do then is reach out to influencers to maybe do a Snapchat takeover or something like that. If that is the case, I urge everyone to make sure that you understand who their audience is then. Because if they're going to be representing your brand and talking and bringing their audience over, it's similar, I guess, to a media buy. You should make sure it's as targeted as possible and you're reaching the proper people.
And you have to make sure that they represent your brand as
Absolutely,
well. Like
vice
they
versa.
are a reflection of who you are. So it's hard. And like the thing about having the high quality programming, I think the purpose of that is to deliver your brand's message. Like that's how you show the world who you are as a brand. Like Red Bull does a great job at that. And the way that live interaction, that's less for branding, more for just interaction and engagement.
What actually tactically are you using? Is it a Google spreadsheet? I know when we used to run social for a bunch of brands, we used to create a Google spreadsheet that we would throw in sample tweets and have the team run their eyes past it to make sure there weren't any really bad things that we didn't say. What do you guys use? We used to use Hootsuite to schedule, which is awesome. But are there any tactical tools that you're using that are kind of not many people are using? Anything neat out there?
I'm going to be a bit controversial and say it's more about the process and the collaborative process and the tools that you're using. I've used a myriad. I've used gathered content, Contently, I've used Google Docs, and at the end of the day, I think one of the reasons why the Hootsuite blog at the moment is performing so well is not because we're using a specific tool, it's because we have that collaborative process between the content team and the blog team, and the content team really own the content they're creating. So they get to pick the topics, or they get to brainstorm the topics and then work on the topic that they came up with in that meeting. And that means we just get better quality content because what they're writing is what they're actually passionate about. So yeah, we're using Google Spreadsheets. We also use a blog and Facebook at Work for posting results. And I just love this. So the blog team post the results back to the writers in kind of long form article content. So, which is perfect for our audience of writers because they're going to read through that and get everything they need to know on last week's results in order to inform the next brainstorm. And I think that's a really great example of like how you can optimize based on like this very specific tool or very specific channel that's perfect for the audience who need to consume that content.
Yeah, so you have brainstorming meetings and then people write their own stuff. That's cool. Fill us in on some other ideas. What are some other process? I mean, it's so great that you talk about process and not just the tool. Kyle, what do you think?
You know, because we actually at Flipboard use Hootsuite and Google Docs like a lot of people. But the thing that when I thought of this question a little bit ahead of time, I think it's like the thing that we often forget to use, and that is just a good old-fashioned brief, right? Like a good old-fashioned written, printed out piece of paper that you hand to everyone on the team, where you have your goals, your you know, the metrics, all the KPIs spelled out. You have insights that you're providing to the team on which to base their strategy, and then you have like tactics, maybe suggested tactics, but not like the final tactics, as in terms of things that you know maybe some stakeholders out there are going to be interested in seeing the results from this tactic or another. So I think for us, it's just like, we forget to do this all the time. And so it's like, use a brief, write a brief, like get it to the people and make sure that everyone's like high-fiving on it. and in sync before you set people off to the races. I think we often do jump in a room and just go, all right, what do you guys want to do? You know, and that's just go back to the old school brief.
Awesome. Jake?
Yeah, everyone on any given team, whether it's, you know, all 5 members of the band and their manager, or everybody in a small company, or the agency and the person and the client and everybody involved, they want to see different things most of the time. For pretty much every content calendar that we're creating, we have folders for the project that includes those things like, here's our actual goals, so that way in case, you know, we have an assistant working on it and they don't know what the goal was because they weren't in that meeting, then they can go look at that so they understand what's going on. And all the content, I'm huge on making sure you have photos and video content in every single thing that you post for the most part, unless it's one of those last minute tweets or something like that. So those are all saved in the same place. The edited versions are there, so you know everything is set up properly. You know, I do this all on Google Drive, and then we schedule through a program called Epoxy, which is kind of like the Hootsuite for like video people. Like if you're a really big video person, that's usually what we use for that. But there's so many, the keeping it organized, just like you were saying, how to get everybody to know what's going on. That's going to be a different person's going to care about that analytics spreadsheet, a different person's going to care about what the actual photo is going to look like, and someone else is going to care about the copy, and someone else is going to care about what the strategy is.
Ty, talk to us about process.
I hate process. It's wrong. So frequently, I mean, like, you just get stuck in the cog of this slow-moving machine, which is why I do think that having a Word doc where people just come to you with like hard, simple, easy questions, like, what day is this going? Like, you have the answer. Pivot tables for days. I mean, it's like terrible. I suggest if you know someone that can do it, like, I have no idea how pivot tables work. I just know a pivot table wizard that like does it for me, and like along the way we make sure that it works perfectly because I'm terrible at actually making the spreadsheets. But once they're there, they're so vital to keep that process moving and be able to answer questions that might slow you down along the way.
Talk to us about Tubular Labs for YouTube, Eileen. What is that?
Oh, so that's just a cool tool that I found for YouTube analytics. It just goes deeper into your fans. So it shows you like your top fans, your most influential fans, which is really good to get ideas on who you can possibly collaborate with because they already like your stuff and they're influential, so you can do that. And also it shows you like who your fans are watching, that their top videos, their top channels that they subscribe to. So I think it's just very useful for me personally as a content creator.
Can you say the name again?
Tubular Labs.
TUBULAR Labs, 2 words.
It's also from a brand perspective because you can kind of like see what other competition is doing as well and get a better idea of what they are up to and their followings and their audience and that type of thing.
Yeah, there's totally a feature where you can compare like one YouTube channel to another YouTube channel to just see like if they have similar audiences. They tell you like how many % of the audience is similar, etc.
All right, so Kyle, talk to us about Percolate.
Cool. Yeah. So my last agency, we had a nice subscription to Percolate. It's a Percolate. It's a subscription model, but it was great because I was at a Madison Avenue agency with like all kinds of layers of approvals for everything that went out had to get approved by like so many people. So Percolate has a built-in approval system that allows you publish to Percolate and everyone gets an email blast of what that piece of content is, whether it's a blog post or an image or a tweet, I guess, and they can weigh in with feedback and they can approve or reject, and all of it's kind of in the central repository, tracks changes and stuff like that. So you just really, in terms of when you have a complex multi-stakeholder approval system, having a system to manage all that rather than just doing it via email is super handy. Also, they have a really cool native application, mobile app, that allows people to submit. You can have your entire staff get this mobile app on their phone, and all of a sudden they become part of the publishing process. So if they capture something really cool at work, and just an image or a moment, a quote, they can submit it to the system, and it gets in line into the system for approvals, and it can be published really quickly. So it just becomes an info gathering and approval system.
It sounds like it's legal team friendly.
Those are
We're
one of the stakeholders.
That's the elephant in the room right now. A lot of people that are here, right? Hootsuite's really good at that, trying to make sure legal teams are approving stuff. Okay, so Lauren, let's jump over to you. You use a tool called Wrike, W-R-I-K-E. What's that?
So that is actually a project management tool, and all of our projects go through that. So we do have dedicated project managers, which we're very lucky to have in-house. And I think that definitely helps with approval processes, because then you don't have copywriters trying to run around the business and find the people they need to talk to, and you've got someone in the background always there. So yeah, if you get assigned to a project and you're part of our kind of approval process framework, then you get sent an email from the project telling you to go into Wrike and review. And we use that with a combination of Google Docs. So basically all of our sign-off, because we have a brief for every project now. That was the first thing I did when I joined. And so all of the sign-off happens within that brief, that Google Doc. And we find that super straightforward, and it's more about educating people and helping them go through the process.
Awesome. Ty, what is Hyper? H-Y-P-R.
Hyper is awesome. What it does, and we were talking about earlier, if you're going to have an influencer maybe running your Snapchat or something for a takeover, it allows you to get the analytics of that particular influencer, find out who their audience is, and what general topics their audience is interested in. That data, as far as I know, is very difficult to get a hold of. They're the first group that's ever been able to offer me that. And I just found out about them like 2 months ago. So I've been just using it like crazy, both to identify audiences and to identify the influencers that we're looking for.
Yeah, it looks like a really cool tool. It allows you to fully break down individual metadata and truly understand who they're talking to, so your money is spent most effectively.
And absolutely, because I mean, like in a time with such a buzzword as influencer marketing, you want to make sure you're spending your money as effectively as possible and make sure that that audience truly is engaged with what it is you're making. And like you said, that it's a mutually beneficial agreement.
So let's dive into some case studies. I want to talk about the good and bad and some cool stuff. And Eileen, we're going to start with you down there at the end. I want to talk with you a little bit about let's keep it tactical. Let's talk about you, because you are the one every day that picks up the shovel and makes your own content, right? From 0 to 90,000 followers you have now. You have another YouTube channel that had even more, didn't it, or something?
Yeah, the music one.
The music one, yeah. So talk to us about, there's this book. How many of you have read the Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up by Marie Kondo? Have you guys ever heard of that book? A little Japanese woman that teaches you how to tidy up your home. I say that because I adore her, because I read it. It's phenomenal. Cleaned our office based on them things. I feel really happy. It's not BS, people. It's really cool. Now, what did you do with that book that you gave to your followers?
Right. First of all, that's an amazing book, and I'm so happy that it's created like huge movements. Because when I first read it, it wasn't that as popular as it is today.
Yeah.
I feel like it just like snowballed, and minimalism is a movement right now.
Have you guys read it? Anybody heard? Have you heard about it? Raise your hand if you heard about it.
Okay, so if you guys have not heard about it, it's basically Marie Kondo. She's a Japanese woman. She's a tidying consultant, and she has her whole system of how to declutter your life. And I mean, the point is to keep only the things that spark joy in you and get rid of everything that doesn't. So you can apply it to physical things in your life, and you can also apply it to other things like your relationships, your to-do list, your digital space, everything. And it's really had a huge influence on my life. So the thing about that book is, it was huge in Japan, and then it got translated into English. And for some reason, like a friend told me about the book like way early on, I think when it just came out with an English version. So I read the book in like a week, and I loved it. And I was so excited about it. I made like a series of videos about it. Like one video was like just summarizing the main points of the book. One video was like how to tidy your closet using the strategy. And then I went on and actually tidied my life through all her 5 categories. There's like clothes, books, papers, miscellaneous, and mementos. So I spent like 6 months tidying through all the things. I documented it, shared it, and I also made like how to fold the KonMari way videos. And I think those are the most popular right now, because when I first read the book, it was early on, and I was trying to look online like, how do you fold the way that she explains in the book, because there are no pictures, it's just text. And she folds her clothes like vertically. So you know, when you open a drawer, you can see all your clothes kind of like a bookshelf. So So there was nothing online, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna figure it out. So I figured out how to fold it, and then I made videos out of it because I knew people would want to know.
So smart.
Yeah.
So smart, right? And what do you think the viewership was on those? Not that it's about a number, but people were dying for that content.
No, yeah, there's millions of views on those videos.
On your videos?
Yeah, on my videos in total in that series. Because, I mean, first of all, the book became such a huge, thing, and then as more people read it, they want to know how to fold the clothes in her book. So that's why a lot of people came to my videos that way. And I know she recently came out with a second book where she had visuals and finally taught people how to fold it through pictures.
Yeah,
But that was 2 years ago when I made those videos.
I listened to the audiobook 2 months ago, and it's really good.
Yeah.
It's really cool. We redid our office with it. Okay, Jane, let's jump over to you. You want to talk about case studies from three interesting people: Kim Kardashian, Donald Trump, and Taylor Swift.
So a lot of the time when I'm talking to new clients, a lot of people don't spend as much time on social media as somebody who works in social media, because when you do, you actually have to pay attention to what's going on. So I like to use bigger names because it's a lot easier to kind of understand what's happening there. And what's been really interesting to me, and I never shut up about Donald Trump as a brand case study, just because I find it fascinating. I'm not a fan of his. I'm a fan of his social media strategy, which I don't think has much of a strategy to it, but it kind of goes to this idea of, if you know who your target audience is, you're able to create content or comment on things that they actually care about. And the reason why I mentioned Taylor Swift is because she will literally go onto Tumblr especially and engage with her fans. Even though she's one of the biggest artists in the world, she still takes the time to engage with people. And that's kind of my go-to example of somebody who actively tries to make sure that her fans know that she cares about them. And when people say, oh, how can I possibly reply to comments on all of my photos and videos and everything like that, if you can, you don't have to reply to all of them, but if Taylor Swift can do it, so can you.
Yeah. Speaking of replying to your fans when you're listening and making their day, Kyle has an example that has to do with ice cream.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of that, what did you call it? The calculated spontaneity?
Yes.
This is the spontaneity part. So, I recently, my wife and I, we decided we're gonna binge watch the good old J.J. Abrams show Alias, which is a lot of fun. If you haven't seen that, it's awesome. And so I just, one night, I picked up some ice cream on the way home from work, and I sat down, and we're about to start, and I just tweeted, about to binge on some Alias and some Tillamook, not at mentioned, Tillamook Marionberry Pie ice cream. Okay? It's easy tweet, hit send, didn't think about it. A few minutes later, got a notification, and it was an at reply from Tillamook to me, and just said, hey, remember that episode where Sloan poisoned the world's supply of Marionberry ice cream? And Sloan was the big villain in Alias. And it was just one of those perfect moments. So I think we forget that, especially social media and these devices that we're now connected to, right? The promise of that whole ecosystem is not being a megaphone. It's not to reach the masses, it's to reach the one. It's to be super personal, I guess Taylor Swift on Tumblr, is to be super personal and get it was timely, it was hyper relevant, it was mega personalized.
And probably annoyed your wife because you're talking about it here years later, right?
Yeah. It was just and for me, I'm a Tillamook super fan now.
Yeah.
They have converted me, and they don't have to pay me a dime, and I will sing their praises all day long. And it's just they have got, that was just it fulfilled the promise of what all this really means when it boils down to it.
And it's crazy how much more, it doesn't matter, one brand may be bigger than your brand, but if you actually talk to a person, they're going to be sitting here on a panel telling everybody about your product, because it means so much more. If you ask me, which movie did I like, if the one who retweeted me when I said I was going to go see it, I'm more likely to recommend that to you.
And that just quickly goes into the psyche of a human, because you look at a brand and you think that it's a no-face robot entity, and then as soon as you get a reply, it immediately humanizes your brand. You recognize someone actually is behind there, recognizing that I am somebody. So it just goes above and beyond. We did that with Red Bull. We had to be very particular about when we responded because there's just so many comments. But someone, it's so dude heavy, and the YouTube comments are the worst comments of all time. But someone commented something along the lines of I poured Red Bull on a caterpillar and it didn't get wings, it just died. So I responded, we poured Red Bull on a caterpillar and it turned into a bald eagle. And then someone screen capped that, put it on Reddit, and it was the front page of Reddit the next day. Just the fact that Red Bull had responded to somebody like kind of trolling them. So I think it's just like humanizing your brand is just so huge.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool. I had a story that's amazing, the bald eagle story. I am your brand. I don't know why when you said it's all men, I pulled the microphone closer and I laughed. I don't know if you guys heard that. It's the worst. I'm so sorry. I promise I'm nice. All right, so let's talk really quickly. Lauren, you said companies like Monster use social listening and Boolean queries to reach out to customers and listen. Talk to us about how we can use Boolean queries.
Yeah, so this is actually something that I covered in the analytics panel earlier as well, so for anyone who wasn't there. I think it's a really useful tool at the beginning and end of the editorial process. Firstly, competitor analysis, like to spy or to understand how your customers are talking to your competitors. And also those moments when you haven't directly engaged or added a brand, like they definitely used a Boolean query to find you. And yeah, I think Carl's example shows the power of those kind of very basic things you can do with social monitoring.
Yeah, and we're talking about content calendar strategies here, but that's a great way to respond in a way. Maybe put some of that into your content calendar, saying that we're going to spend a little time responding every day for a little while, just to off the cuff, have some fun, talk about bald eagles and stuff, right?
Well, and you should be doing social listening, there's no question about it. Like, that, you're absolutely right, that's the way you find people. I also do think, like, if you're going to be on a platform posting on it, you sure as hell better be a part of that community. Like, if you are not a part of it, you're gonna just, I said this earlier, you're gonna come off so wrong. So, like, take time outside of work and just be a part of those threads, be a part of that community, and then qualitatively for your brand, be going through threads you might just happen upon. That's how I found the caterpillar thing. I'm not looking for caterpillars when I'm searching through threads. I'm looking for people talking about Red Bull, but sometimes you stumble upon something that might not have been tagged properly or might not have been able to be found through social listening. That is a little gem.
So my real day job is traveling the country speaking to teenagers about how to SEO their brand and how to be on social in a way that's light, bright, and polite. So I speak to tens of thousands of kids every year. And one of the case studies that we show them, Ty, is when this young woman got this job offer from Cisco, a big Wi-Fi hotspot company. She got this dream job offer, and she went and tweeted, and they said, hey, we loved your interview, you're all this cool stuff, would you like to join our family? She said, yeah. She hung up the phone, and what do you think she did next? She tweeted, Cisco just offered me a job, but she didn't tag them in it. She just said, Cisco just offered me a job, now I have to weigh the fat paycheck against the daily commute and hating the work. And all the students go, oh! We put that up on the left, and it just showed, and then we asked the students, we say, how many of you think that Cisco saw this tweet? And all the students are starting to go, well, maybe, and we tell them, yeah, they're listening without the @ sign, without the hashtag, without anything, because they want to know when people are talking about their brand. And they responded, one of their sales team listens on social, because he's always trying to find out, does somebody hate our Wi-Fi product because it's broken? And they responded, who's the hiring manager? I think they would love to know that you will hate the work. We here at Cisco are versed in the web. I've read that slide so many times. But anyways, so big brands are listening, right? Even though they don't have it as a part of their content strategy and that you're not tagging them, they want to know the real people that are talking about the brand, good or bad.
I think that also draws attention to the fact that you should be talking to your sales team as part of your editorial strategy, because they are so important and they are going to be picking up on things from your customers on the front line that you in the ivory tower of marketing will never see. So yeah, one of the first things I've done at Hootsuite is to just set up stakeholder interviews with every salesperson I can get my hands on, because they have so much valuable information. And yeah, the content team do paired writing with sales and enterprise marketing enterprise managers, because they are the people who are speaking the customer's language, and they can tell us when we're switching on the kind of marketing spiel and when we're talking authentically. So I think that's really important.
Really wise.
We're going to do that. Thank you for the tip.
That's
You're
great. All right, so let's open it up to some questions. We've got about 10 minutes. Yes, Jennifer, you first.
So yeah, I'm just kind of curious, what are y'all's opinions on sort of the management of social channels within a team? Do you think it's better to find people who are specialized in the channel and let them run that and kind of take ownership of that with the opportunity? I love the idea of like, if you have a good idea and maybe you're managing the Twitter account, but it's a big YouTube video, having some collaboration. Do you think it's better to let people run one channel if you have a team of individuals, or more so run types of content?
It might have to do with your particular brand and maybe the scale and how big it is, because at a certain point, I mean, I hate to keep going back to my Red Bull days, but like, I was the only one running the YouTube channel, and that was not just the strategy, but that was also the distribution. So like, and that was before they had a scheduling tool. So like, you had to just be up at 4 in the morning to load a video from China. Like, it's
Good thing you drink Red Bull.
yeah. With that said, the reason we did that was because we wanted to make sure that the voice was consistent across the board, and that's where I think the value comes in of having a single person owning that, or at least a very tight team who understands and is well versed and has an experience within the brand to keep the voice on that particular channel authentic, direct, and not veering from person to person when they switch whoever's talking.
I think we look at T-shaped people. So on the content team, we were working in channels. So we had like an email expert, a white paper expert, someone who works specifically on the blog. And I think that gets really boring for people. And also having a fresh voice, as long as you have that kind of editorial consistency, which I think we really do now. I think it makes life so much more interesting because they can share that email expertise with the rest of the team, and then people get to work on different projects. And I'm sure there's loads of like weird, cool stuff that an email person that can then take to a white paper or vice versa. And I think, that just makes the job so much more fun and so much more engaging when you're switching. Obviously, we want to keep that expertise, but we want to have that variety of work and variety of voices in each of our channels.
So allow them to manage the channel from a project management standpoint, or for sort of spearheading it, but then from a content perspective, allow that crossover to occur so that anyone can bring an idea. Even if you run the Twitter, somebody that runs the Facebook can bring that idea and then have that cross collaboration. Cool.
Edwin, yes.
Thank you. What tips do you have for getting ahead of the news? In other words, getting the inside story before it's actually out in the news from whatever's happening. I was watching the other day on Bloomberg going, the news outlets about Uber's new self-driving cars, right? I'm thinking, well, I don't really have anything in that subject realm, but there were obviously reporters who knew that was coming well before I did. I'm sure there was probably news out there. But what tips do you have for getting on the inside?
I'm going to repeat the question for the camera people that can't hear it. What tips do you have for getting ahead of the news on social, or what tools or tips or tactics? And I'm going to add, do you need to get ahead of the news? Do you have to be that relevant? So, yes.
I mean, for us, because news is part of what Flipboard does as a business model, I think, again, I'll just go back to understanding what your role to your point of, do you need to get ahead of it? You have to understand what your role in that news cycle is. And for us, we have learned that it is like that kind of like the seeding, but definitely the roundup. When a big event that no one can predict happens, it's us giving that 360-degree roundup. But, there are some amazing, the same tools that you can use to monitor your social media presence, you can use as a social media scraper to just see what's popping out there, So there's some great tools out there, ranging from like, the Radiant 6s and the Crimson Hexagons and the Nuvies of the world. Those can be used to judge your brand's, everything from its reach to its, the affinity for your brand, but also just looking at what's trending in a very macro way and getting ahead of it that way.
So a couple of kind of big picture examples. I think one is search trends, and Google Trends is awesome. It's a free tool that you can use to look at search trends over the course of a year. And a investment broker actually partnered with a search firm and looked at the correlation between the kinds of way that people were searching for financial products and the stock market. And if you had bet on the basis of the way the search trends were going, which was when the stock market was going down, people were searching for savings, and when the stock market was going up, they were searching for loans. And if you'd followed that, you would have made your money back 9 times over. But obviously, that doesn't work when everybody's doing it because the trend then disappears. So I think that's one very interesting example. I think coming back to the point of, do you need to be ahead of the news? Should that be your strategy? Is it more like long-form content that's more reflective on a news item? Because you're competing against pretty much every news organization in the world. I think one organization that did it incredibly well was This American Life, where they followed the trail of cash to the crash in 2009, and they basically had a story out on the subprime mortgage market before the crash actually happened, and obviously that got a huge level of press and started Planet Money. So I think that's how much investment it took. Like, a reporter was researching this story for 6 months before he broke it, and just happened to be ahead of that curve. And I think so much of it is down to luck and chance, and unless you're talking about it in your very, very specific industry for your specific business, it's incredibly hard to do.
Yeah.
I think quickly too, there's also just, I absolutely agree, like being able to assess trends and look at them is huge. But on top of that, qualitatively, for what's kind of trending and what's new could be just simply being on Reddit. Reddit for me is almost everything. Like, I go on Reddit every single morning, first thing I do. And Reddit can be terrible if you don't know what subreddits to go to. If you're not familiar with Reddit, I can talk to you afterwards and give you a little bit of a deeper dive, but like simply knowing the subreddits to go to and understanding what those communities are building up will help you kind of qualitatively see what's coming up and rising to the top.
Who's on Reddit? Anybody? You guys on Reddit very often? Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's like opinions and plus news. It's really cool. Yeah. It's got its own way to promote yourself in a really humble way. Like, here's what I did and here's how I gave back. I noticed those guys are really careful, the ones that become really popular, very careful. It's less about them and more about the program and stuff. It's really cool.
One of the oldest students.
Yeah, it's been around a long time, yeah. And then one more thing, we're talking about content calendars. I wanted to talk about this earlier. If you tweet at Chipotle Tweets, they're our sponsor. They gave us 120 burritos today. They're amazing. But they'll respond to every one of us. They have a team listening. And they go, thanks so much, Josh. We're glad to see it worked out. Yay. And it's just 1 word or 2 words, but they make us feel like, and they speak on our panels from time to time. They're LA marketing person. She said, yeah, they'll respond to you. They'll get it, everybody. They'll respond to everybody. And they just get around, go, thanks, hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, try to stay cool next time. Just slowly and surely. It's kind of cool. They couldn't get at Chipotle, so they're at Chipotle Tweets, which is kind of a bummer, but...
I want to meet the guy who owns at Chipotle.
I know, exactly. So, hey, I want to thank you guys for coming out. Let's give a round of applause to these awesome people.